everyone, I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Jayson.
And Jayson and I are going to do a little Treknado segment here on the Geekvolution Minibus, and we're going to talk a little bit about the documentary that was released in the mid-90s called Trekkies. Jayson, I think this is a thing that every Star Trek fan should see. This is kind of a classic Star Trek documentary, and there's now loads of Star Trek documentaries, both serious and kind of more fun and silly, like this one is. This was kind of the Star Trek documentary in the 90s, and was weirdly popular. Like, a lot of people who don't even like Star Trek watched this, I think because they saw it as kind of a comedy and sort of exploitative of, look how silly these Star Trek fans are, these crazy weirdos who dress up in costume and go to conventions and buy a lot of stuff. And I will say, there are some really eccentric, odd people in this documentary.
Yes.
And I don't think it is intending to exploit them. I don't think that was Denise Crosby's goal, and especially when you see the second movie, like, it really doesn't feel like that's what it's doing. But weirdly, even though it wasn't designed to do that, I think that's part of what made it popular, was people kind of pointing and laughing at these people. But this is about the fandom in general, and not just here's all the crackpot people. It's kind of, I think it's got a good mix of kind of weirdos and also more, you know, level-headed Star Trek fans, and you can kind of make up your mind as to which people fall in what category with that. But it was also about the influence of Star Trek in general, and it kind of plays as a catch-all movie because we hadn't had a lot of Star Trek documentaries yet. You know, there were a couple TV things here and there, but I think it wanted to be, I mean, it doesn't go through like the history of Star Trek or anything. It's very much about the fandom, but it's not just about the fans. It's also about how the actors and people behind the scenes feel about the influence of Star Trek in the fandom, and so it gets a surprising amount done. But Jayson, I mostly wanted to show it to you just because I thought you might enjoy some of the kind of more, you know, eccentric characters in this, and some of the costumes, and so
the costumes are great.
Yeah. Some of the fun stuff, like the guy who builds a Captain Pike chair and drives around in it.
Why do they do that? I think that's one of the weirdest people.
If you made a cat, but also kind of a technical genius, right? Like the stuff he was making was really cool.
Yeah.
If you, and it was really funny, like, he was trying to build a cloaking device, like, not one that would actually cloak, but just a replica of the cloaking device. Although he didn't talk about it that way. Like, he didn't say whether or not he thought it could actually cloak. I don't think he thought that, but just the way he talked about it, this is a cloaking device. But he was working on Nomad, and like, some of the stuff he was doing was really cool. But if you built a working Captain Pike chair that you could drive down the highway, you would totally do that. You would totally drive around in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, right? So what were your kind of favorite bits of this? And just overall, did you like watching it?
Well,
was it fun?
Yeah, it was fun.
And I'll show you the second one if you want to see it, because I've got that too.
I do.
It came out almost a decade later.
Oh, cool.
And is more
like
about
2000s.
Yeah,
2000s?
and is more about the like international fans.
Oh, okay.
And like Star Trek rock groups and stuff like that, because there's like Star Trek bands, and it covers some of that.
Oh, cool.
And you remember the really nerdy kid with his own club who had the who had a custom uniform and all of that, and he was making fan films? He comes back and kind of reflects back on his time as a teenager, and he's gotten a lot more, it seems, by that point, like, more well-adjusted and less socially awkward, and it's really kind of cool to see.
Is he less nerdy?
I mean, he's still into that stuff, but he's just, and he's still making fan films and stuff, but he's just less socially awkward, and is able to kind of intermingle better, and he's, at least at that time, you know, he had a, you know, really good, stable relationship. I think maybe he was married, I can't remember now, but anyway, but what were your favorite bits in this, Jayson?
Of course, the Captain Pike chair, of course. I think it was weird that someone put Star Trek stuff, lots of Star Trek stuff in his dentist's office. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you had a Star Trek fan dentist who who decorates his office in Star Trek and other sci-fi stuff, and makes all of his employees wear Star Trek uniforms, which in and of itself I don't think is horrible. Like, I think that it's kind of a fun theme for a dentist office, but it's too tacky. He had way too much going on.
Yeah,
and it looked seizure-inducing. Like, I wouldn't want to sit in a dentist chair with all those strobes flashing.
Yeah, and I think it's also weird that he makes all his employees wear Star Trek uniforms. Mm-hmm. Like, why does he do that?
Well, you know, sometimes you have uniforms in an office like that, and they're just trying to go with a theme.
Yeah.
You just kind of have to know that when you work there, I guess. You know, you had that one girl that forever wouldn't put it on, and he finally said, yeah, you have to wear this. That's what we wear here. And, I don't know, I kind of understand that to a degree. Like, it does seem maybe a little bit eccentric and out there, but also, you know, if that's the uniform, you know, everybody that works there should probably wear the uniform.
Yeah.
What did you think of the lady who was obsessed with Brent Spiner?
Why? Like, it's always...
Because she loves Data and thinks Brent Spiner is attractive.
Yeah, it's always Spiner this, Spiner that, or Brent this, Brent that. Mm-hmm.
Did that seem a little bit excessive?
Yeah. Why does everyone love me?
Jayson has never understood the fan love for Data.
Yeah. He's a robot. Why?
Well, he's really interesting to people because of you know, his goal of wanting to become a human.
Yeah.
And we tend to... And remember, Spock was the most popular character in the original series, and we tend to fall in love with these characters who are not quite human, but striving to be, and then turn out to be the most human among us.
Is Worf like that?
Not to the same degree, but he has a little bit of that, in that, you know, he was raised by humans, but doesn't fully understand his own humanity. Mm. I mean, yeah, there's a little bit of that, but every series has one, you know, like TOS has Spock, TNG has Data, DS9 has Odo, to some degree he's like that, the Voyager has 7 of 9.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And Netflix.
Jayson likes to call Neelix Netflix.
Yeah. And then Sulu is Hulu, and Klingons are Amazon.
So, what did you think about the juror who wears her Starfleet uniform to go to jury duty?
What's a juror?
So they had we had the Watergate scandal, or not Watergate, excuse me, the Whitewater scandal with Clinton in the 90s, and this lady puts on her Star Trek uniform to go to jury duty. So the jury are the people who are going to decide whether or not someone in a trial is innocent. And she made national news because she was wearing her Starfleet uniform in this really high-profile trial.
Yeah, and it's funny that there's someone who makes his own radio show about Star Trek.
Yeah, and you see, like, just how different things are now, and how far we've come. Like, everybody and his dog has a podcast now. I'm sure there are also people's dogs who have podcasts, but those ladies, you know, were wanting to do a radio show during a period where you couldn't do that independently as easily.
And Tasha Yar was on one.
That's right, sure.
Yeah.
They probably got her while they were making this movie.
Mm-hmm. And it's really funny that why does that guy have a dog named Computer?
Yeah, that's hilarious.
Like, just because you want to say to your dog, "Hello, Computer," it's not... I don't know why you...
That would be the reason, right?
Yeah, that is the reason.
Jayson latches onto that, and I had to remind him that at one time he tried to get us to get a dog and name it Super Nintendo, and I just don't understand how Computer is a stranger name for a dog than Super Nintendo.
No, it should be a dog named Genesis and a cat named Super Nintendo.
Oh, okay. Yes, of course.
Yeah.
They have to be, you have to have the rival game systems for rival animals, sure. So, Jayson, having grown up in my house, obviously we're big Star Trek fans, and you've seen and had Star Trek around all growing up. But were you aware of the sheer popularity of it and how and you know how influential it's been on the culture? Was that a thing that surprised you, that there were this many like really diehard Star Trek fans, even in a documentary made 20 years ago?
Kind of.
Or were you just like, oh yes, of course, because you've been to conventions and stuff? Like, did any of that surprise you?
Kind of.
Kind of? I'm just trying to get a sense of your perspective watching this, again, 20 years after it's made, and growing up with all the, with the pop culture boom, and in this house.
And at first, I didn't even know what Trekkies even was. Like, was it a fan show? Was it...
Yeah, sure.
I didn't even know that it was a documentary or anything about it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, just because of the picture, I'm like, oh, this is a fan film. Wait, no, it's a documentary. So I'm like, wait, that's a documentary?
Yeah, and it's really nice, all of the interviews that Denise Crosby does with, and of course, she's able to, she's got those ins and she's able to get those interviews. But it's really nice that she also talks to the actors about conventions and how they feel about how much Star Trek has had an influence on people. One of my favorite things in this is Kate Mulgrew talking about what she thinks the difference is between Trekkies and Trekkers. It's absolutely hysterical. She's like, Trekkers are walking with us, and Trekkies are just passively watching Star Trek, and she seems like really passionate about it, and it's hilarious. It seems like a thing she's coming up with in the moment, and she's like so proud of herself that she's like really, really excited about it. It's one of my absolute favorite things in the documentary.
Yeah.
What term do you prefer, Trekkies or Trekkers? And it's funny because the movie can't come up with a consensus of which is the right thing to use in which circumstance. Like, a lot of people are saying in this, and I don't even know that this is a debate anymore. I mean, like, I hear those terms kind of interchangeably now. I don't think it matters to people. And I think I hear Star Trek fan as much as anything now, where it's like the Trekkie Trekker thing. I don't know if that's even a thing anymore. But but in this, you have a lot of people saying, well, Trekkies are the old school Star Trek fans, and Trekkers are the newer generation. But which one do you actually like better? Like, if you had to call yourself one.
I think a Trekkie.
Yeah.
Because, I don't know. I mean...
I kind of agree with the people that say that Trekker sounds kind of pretentious, but...
Yeah. I mean, I don't even know why they do the whole Trekkie Trekker thing. It just call themselves Star Trek fans. Like, why did they do that?
It seems like every franchise now has one, where like everybody has a thing that they call themselves based on what their big fandom is. You know, like Firefly the fans are brown coats, and you know there's something for all those things. These days we're so inundated with pardon me, I haven't shown you Firefly yet, but these days we're so inundated with scripted television and all of these different properties that, like, you do have diehards that get into one franchise, but I think a lot of people are more, I don't know if well-rounded is the right way to put it, but I think a lot of people are more fans of a whole bunch of things at the same time, and there's not, like, a way of life as much with one thing over another thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think these days there's just certain things that people are kind of surprised if you haven't taken the time to see, even though there's so much vying for our attention at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, anything else you wanted to talk about?
No, just it's really fun. It's just really cool documentary.
Did you get bored anywhere watching it?
No.
Or was it all pretty cool? Pretty interesting?
It was pretty interesting, yeah. And then, like you said, I think any Star Trek fan should watch this.
So like I said, there is a second one, and we'll watch that soon.
And
Denise
we'll do
Crosby.
it on the next minibus.
Well, maybe so. Denise Crosby tried to make a third movie. She was trying to get that off the ground in the mid-2000s. And Gene Roddenberry's son, Rod Roddenberry, was in the middle of making his documentary, which is really quite brilliant. I think it might be the best Star Trek documentary we've had, partly just because I love how much of a character piece that is for Rod Roddenberry. I've talked about this before, we reviewed it, but he kind of discovers an appreciation for Gene Roddenberry and for Star Trek through studying his dad. But anyway, I met Denise Crosby at a convention and talked to her about this, and she told me that this was, I don't know, circa like 08, 09, I forget exactly what year. But she said that he was making it difficult for her to make that documentary because he didn't want anybody to make anything that seemed to be making fun of Star Trek, which this movie had gotten criticism of. And so she didn't know if it would ever get made, and it has not gotten made. So yeah, but she was, I had my crew there when I still had a Star Trek club then, and she seemed really interested in talking to us, and we might have been in that movie if it had happened, but it, alas, did not come to fruition. I have no idea what that one would have been about, if she would have had like a third angle, because again, the second movie was more about, you know, international Star Trek fans and Star Trek bands and stuff, and I'm not sure what angle you would take with the third one. But yeah. So anyway. Well, folks, thanks a lot for watching. Sure appreciate it. And Jayson and I are going to move on now to the next segment in the Omnibus. So if you want to just keep it rolling, if you're watching this in the Minibus playlist, go ahead and do that. And Jayson and I are going to move on now to the Captain's Log and talk a little bit about some news for you. So stay tuned.
Captain's Log.
And in the meantime, I'm Captain Logan.
And I am Jayson.